When John Cena's feet hit the floor at the 2025 Royal Rumble, it started us on the road to WrestleMania, and it set off a chain reaction that would cause a change in fan sentiment towards one of WWE's most popular names. We're not talking about John Cena, though. We're here to talk about main event Jey Uso, the man set to face Gunther for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of WrestleMania 41. Jey Uso is on the edge of the biggest achievement of his singles career after spending half a decade as one of the main players in one of WWE's most compelling storylines in the Bloodline saga. Jey is about to face the world champ on the grandest stage of them all, and he does so with a tidal wave of momentum behind him. World champion Gunther wasn't feeling very oozy about his WrestleMania opponent, and as the weeks have gone on, it seems that more and more fans have come round to Gunther's way of thinking, with a bubbling negativity that is getting harder to ignore. Over 4 decades of WrestleMania main events, we have seen some pretty divisive choices, like Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow at WrestleMania 11, Triple H versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 18, The Miz versus John Cena at WrestleMania 27, to name but a few. But could this main event be the most divisive ever? You'll notice I'm putting main event in bunny rabbit ears, because main events aren't really in the main event these days, are they? I personally do not see this showdown between Yeet and the man to beat going on very, very last. It's still, however, a divisive choice for a top-tier title tussle at WrestleMania 41, arguably one of the most important WrestleManias to date. Now, watching Raw as a casual fan, you would assume that all is fine because Jey Uso's ring entrances look incredible. Thousands of fans throwing hands up for the main event as he walks across the lobby of the arena, walks through the pulsating WWE universe. There's a Pavlovian reaction to Jey Uso on WWE TV, where the mere sight of a hand gesture can force even the harshest of skeptics to bellow or whisper a yeet, a catchphrase born during a hilarious press conference where Jey and Cody had clearly been imbibing in a cheeky little bit of a beforehand beverage. Now, when Jey is on the microphone as well, he very much has the fans in the palm of his hand, and we've seen him masterfully control the emotions of the audience in a way that should undeniably make him a main eventer. He's also been in the top 5 of WWE's merch sellers since last year, and at one point he was beating both John Cena and CM Punk combined in sales. Now, the optics are clear. Jey Uso is beloved, and Gunther has been a dominant world champion, so it's a David versus Goliath story played out in the Netflix generation. On TV, all this seems fine. However, the yeet is turning, with a growing online vocal minority disapproving of Jey Uso's Mania main event status. You only have to search Jey Uso on Twitter or Reddit during Raw to see a torrent of comments echoing frustration with Uso's current climb, calling his Royal Rumble win a waste and disapproving of his in-ring action. WWE's YouTube videos featuring Jey Uso are receiving overwhelming downvotes, with the video featuring Jey Uso versus Austin Theory receiving, at time of recording, 16,000 likes to over 83,000 dislikes. Videos from last night's Raw got a few hundred dislikes each, with the exception of the segments involving Jey Uso, which each have several thousand. YouTube hides the thumbs down to those not savvy enough to install an extension in their browser, which sort of makes these kind of statistics even more damning. People aren't doing it for show. They're doing it in a way that won't be visible to regular consumers. Now, obviously, when it comes to online commentary, On the internet, it has to be taken with a grain of salt. The sort of place where you could share a picture of a cat and be called out for hating dogs. I mean, sure, whilst a comment like this one from Brian calling for Cultaholic to sack me for being fat, ugly, unfunny, nose twitchy, and disliked by everyone in America isn't the majority's opinion, as far as I'm aware. There'll no doubt be comments down below this video that will also agree with the sentiment from the ever lovable Brian here. I mean, for the record, I've lost 16 pounds since January. The nose thing is very much allergies or a deviated septum. But ugly, unfunny, I can't do much about that. Sorry, Brian, love you, bye. But as long as they're in the minority, they'll generally get brushed to one side and treated with whatever sort of dissent it deserves. However, we have seen in the past with wrestling how that loud minority can start to influence the bigger picture. The Rock getting hoofed out of last year's WrestleMania main event was due to a movement by the fans on socials that started as a handful of what were called Cody crybabies. Over a decade before that, Daniel Bryan's Yes movement got underway with a vocal online fan base frustrated with their guy getting overlooked. So all it would take would be for some cracks to form in Jey Uso, a bad match, or maybe a botched dive, and that vocal minority may start to permeate the paying punters. This rage against the Yeet comes from a perception of Jey Uso's in-ring form not becoming that of a singles main eventer. The way Jey Uso wrestles hasn't really changed since he was in a record-breaking tag team with his brother Jimmy. I mean, his match against his brother at last year's WrestleMania, I'm sorry to bring that up again, was a proof of concept of that theory, that not only do tag team partners rarely make better enemies, but that Jey has all the same style, but less of the substance as a top-tier singles wrestler. Now, that can be forgiven when you're a bit further down the pecking order, like Jey battling Bron Breakker over the Intercontinental title last year, didn't garner too much negativity outside of the briefness of Jey's reign, a run on top even shorter than Liz Truss's as Prime Minister. And when he's in the midst of a faction friction, as we saw with OG Bloodline taking on the Rogue Bloodline, where those single-star limitations can be hidden and his skills in a team dynamic are very much on show. However, if you are in the World Championship match on what could arguably be called the most important WrestleMania ever, you're obviously expected to have leveled up somewhat from those days as part of the doubles division, especially if you are in a World Championship match against what could arguably be called the biggest wrestler and the best wrestler in the company right now in Gunther. The Ring General was rumored to be going up against some heavy hitters before we got to this point. It was discussed that an April showdown with maybe John Cena or possibly Goldberg was on the cards. This, as well as a missed opportunity against Brock Lesnar the year prior, suggests that an opportunity for a career-defining match for the champ has actually been set aside now in favor of a career-defining moment for Jey Uso, a guy who he has already beaten 3 times on television. Gunther can have phenomenal matches against anyone, lest we forget. His previous tussles with Jey have been the best of Jey's solo run, and that's not by coincidence. So there's no doubt that, mainly thanks to Gunther, to be honest, it'll be all right on WrestleMania night when it comes to the World Championship showdown between the Ring General and the King of Yeet. Now, match quality aside, many have called out that this particular road to WrestleMania isn't the most captivating. Whilst Jey Uso himself has failed to capture lightning in a bottle with this run in as far as in-ring work goes, WWE have not helped with their eyes on the far bigger prize of Cody Rhodes defending wrestling against John Cena and The Rock. Big battle for souls taking over the lion's share of the work for WWE right now. The first part, with Gunther promising to obliterate Jey Uso and essentially powerbomb him into a fine powder for having the audacity to choose him as a WrestleMania opponent was a really strong start, because Gunther openly said he wanted a bigger match for Mania and promised to beat Jey up and beat up anybody who sides with him for making this dastardly decision. It's a grand story. However, it was a story that you could run for maybe 3 weeks before you run out of road. This was a story that was started with 6 weeks to go until WrestleMania, and you can tell this is starting to be dragged out somewhat now. Throughout it, WWE Creative have failed to truly evolve Jey Uso into more than just a catchphrase, a spear, a super kick and a splash. There was some hope on Raw last night though, when Jimmy Uso gave his brother a much needed pep talk, one that seemingly came from those detractors online, saying that the current version of Jey Uso, botching dives and missing spears, couldn't beat Gunther, and even incorporated Jey's universally panned botch into the storyline, which says that Jey's recent fumblings are actually a sign that the top contender isn't where he needs to be. Now, it felt like WWE may not only be addressing the bubbling animosity, but using it as rocket fuel in the final weeks before they have that big WrestleMania showdown. And I don't think that is a bad decision at all, because the next few weeks are crucial for Jey Uso in particular. See, WWE needs to spend this time testing Jey Uso more than ever. You want to put him out there in longer matches, providing that John Cena doesn't bang on for too long again. You want to build on his moveset, give him more flavor for those in-ring antics. You want to develop Jey's story a little more, deepen his motives, curate a wrestling star that isn't the product of the bloodline, but one that stands on his own and builds his own heritage and legacy. There is still time to do that. And if Raw yesterday was anything to go by, there is some hope for that to actually come to fruition. I was really optimistic by what they played out on Raw last night, especially with this little bit of time still to go. But what do we get the night after WrestleMania 41? Do we have Gunther standing tall as world champion, leaving Jey Uso beaten and broken for a 4th time, and wasting months and months of momentum on a guy who was never going to be the guy? Or do we have Jey Uso yeeting his way into Raw after Mania as World Heavyweight Champion and have that magnifying glass under him even more so, as a champion that will have to carry the company, as a champion that more and more people believe he can't hang between the ropes with the best of them? It will all depend on how the final stretch of this road to WrestleMania goes as to what the right answer in that question is going to be. Do you see Jey Uso as World Heavyweight Champion coming out of WrestleMania? Where do you sit on the Jey Uso problem that people are calling it? Let us know in the comments down below. Stay Usi and love you, bye.